of his letters to the church in Rome and to the churches of Galatia. In these two letters, Paul emphasizes the doctrine of justification with such frequency and regularity that no one can miss his point. He believes this doctrine is at the very heart of the gospel, and that when one denies or compromises on this vital point, the gospel itself is lost. So narrow is his view that he insists that those who disagree with him on this topic are not truly Christians. Such strident speaking is surely out of step with today's politically correct way of thinking. There was a time not so long ago when most in the church believed it was necessary for Christians to be as narrow as the Apostle Paul. They shared with him the belief that there was one divine truth, revealed by God, and that people are subject to that truth regardless of their own personal feelings about the subject. Of course, some believed God had revealed this truth in ways outside Scripture alone. This precipitated the great battle of the Reformation. But even then, the battle lines drawn on both sides were created by those who believed the issues truly were important. Those who still agree today find themselves in a vast minority. This book is for that minority. Those who forget the past. We stand on the shoulders of giants. Modern Christians owe so much to those loyal men and women who sacrificed to give us a wonderful heritage and whose lives are such a testimony to God's faithfulness to his people. Sadly, for many in the church today, church history extends back 20, 50, maybe 100 years. The idea that God has been slowly, patiently building his church through many centuries is encouraging to the believer, especially when it is coupled with the recognition that God uses very flawed people, like us. But so many today miss out on the benefit of knowing about God's faithfulness over time because they simply ignore the study of church history altogether. Frequently, this situation results in the contemporary church making the same mistakes over again. Not learning from history tends to cause us to reinvent the wheel on a nearly generational basis. There are historical issues that are directly related to the purity of the church and to the gospel of Jesus Christ that have been addressed in the past by godly believers with great insight and understanding. The Reformation showed quite clearly what those matters were. The most basic was that of sola scriptura, the doctrine that the Bible, and the Bible alone, is the sole infallible rule of faith for the church. What we believe must be founded on the Bible alone, and all of the Bible, or it is not truly Christian. Not only this, but the traditions of the church, no matter how important we may feel them to be, are not equal in authority with the inspired words of Scripture. Christians look to the Bible as their single infallible source of authority and truth. From this principle of sola scriptura came what might be called the central material doctrine of the Reformation, justification by faith. When Scripture was allowed to speak with its full voice, the doctrine of God's free and gracious justification of sinful men based upon the completed work of Jesus Christ upon the cross of Calvary stood in stark contrast to the teaching of medieval Catholicism, a doctrine based upon human action, meritorious works, indulgences, and penance. J.I. Packer, in his fine introductory essay to James Buchanan's work, The Doctrine of Justification, wrote, Martin Luther described the doctrine of justification by faith as articulus stantis vel candentis ecclesia, the article of faith that decides whether the church is standing or falling. By this he meant that when this doctrine is understood, believed, and preached, as it was in New Testament times, the church stands in the grace of God and is alive. But where it is neglected, overlaid, or denied, as it was in medieval Catholicism, the church falls from grace, and its life drains away, leaving it in a state of darkness and death. The reason why the Reformation happened and Protestant churches came into being was that Luther and his fellow reformers believed completely in this respect that no faithful Christian could, with a good conscience,